The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Lining up, Adrian Nolan, here it comes. Balloon attack, connects.
Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
Alright, so I just want to preface before this episode begins that I wanted to wait until after Double or Nothing to put out this video in hopes of seeing AEW solve this issue. And as we know, Double or Nothing happened on May 29th. And of course, this is almost a week after that. So 2 episodes of Dynamite have happened after this. I'm recording June 9th. And so the quick preface also is that, of course, it's been a while since we've had a Game Day episode, but that is, of course, due to, the trip to Colorado happening, and I had this episode in the bag, the idea of it. So when I got back, I wanted to get to it and make sure I had it planned through. So there's a couple of things to get into before the main topic, because there's just a lot. There's obviously the NBA Finals going on. Boston's up 2-1. I definitely want to talk about that. Well, at first, my video about the future of Philadelphia sports was looking like it was aging terribly, as do a lot of my takes on, the Rule 34 podcast. But the Phillies one is kind of looking better because, they fired Girardi, and look at them now. 6-game winning streak, where in each of these games they've scored like a plethora of runs. Like I'm pretty sure. Like, if I can fact check this real quick without having too much dead air and without too much rambling, I'm pretty sure if you check their past couple games, they've had, like, at minimum, I want to say at least 5 runs scored. Like, they have been going crazy. They've been having just hit after hit after hit, and it's just crazy to see the difference after firing, the manager for us. They've started going off. Of course, giving the young guys like Boehm and Stott more at hits has been well, because I saw a stat. It was like he had, I think, like 3 hits and 4 hits in the months of like March and April, I think it was, or no, April and May, and yet in the month of like June alone, he has like a ton of hits. I forget what the exact number is, my bad. But he's been doing really well for the Phillies ever since getting that chance. So look at these past couple of games. Okay, so yeah, I think we ended off May. Let's see. Yeah, we ended off May just getting completely swept by the Giants. I think we completely got swept that series. We didn't get swept. We got one of them on June 1st. But then look at this. So we beat the Giants 6-5. The Phillies then beat the Angels 10-0, 7-2, 9-7. And the stat I told my dad was, I saw that like apparently the Phillies hadn't beaten the Angels since like 2003, I think was the stat. And yet, after firing their manager, here they go with a combined total of, 17 plus 9... 26 runs. Am I doing the math correctly? 26 runs across 3 games. They then beat the Brewers 3-2, and then yesterday they beat the Brewers 10-0. What firing a manager does to a team. That is absolutely crazy, the run they've gone on. And I told you, if they can get things together, they have a really bright future. And before, people were kind of overreacting, going like, like, it's terrible how they have this like terrible record and they have one of the highest payrolls, which yes, that's a valid criticism, but you got to give it time. We're still in the early seasons. There's 160 games in baseball. We still have July, August, and September to go, but that's kind of where to be worried, as we know with Phillies. Seeing the Phillies play in September is always such a scary thing. You never know what Phillies you're gonna get. But so it's real nice to see them doing so well. And so maybe with this runner streak, I might come back with another game day breakdown of it, of a full game. And obviously, of course, expect a video on the finals. I think I might want to wait instead of covering the finals game by game, I might want to wait till the series or full thing is done to give a full breakdown and just like, because honestly, it's a masterclass from both teams. You know, like the last year was kind of terrible for the Warriors and the Celtics, and to see them come back like this and meet in the finals is honestly super crazy. So it's just a masterclass of a season of retooling from both sides, you know, especially because I talked about it in the Boston Nets series. You know, how the Celtics were like they were barely above 500, like at 500, like at a certain point, and then they just went on to win and get like a really high seed. You know, it was really crazy on their part, especially from their rookie coach. So that's definitely going to be a good video topic to talk about. But the main topic, so I brought it up about wanting to wait till after Double Nothing. So it's, you know, let's just kind of give another preface and go through the history real quick. So if you asked fans of AEW, what is one section of the product that desperately needs a fix / a hard reset, you'd see a tie between two topics: the women's division and the TNT title. Specifically, the TNT title's title picture and the booking of it. Now, I'm not going to get into AEW's handling of their women's division, because discussing that is like talking to a wall, because most of the criticism falls on deaf ears, and most of the fans and a lot of people just kind of refuse to hear the validity of that criticism, and insist that things are at their best right now, and that, you know, they're doing the best that they can and there's nothing more they can do. But, you know, I'm not going to go there right now. That's a video for another day, which would probably require 2 episodes to get into, because that is just how much to talk about the AEW's women's division. Because all I'm going to say is they have the talent, they're really struggling to figure out what to do with a lot of that talent. But, however, the criticism of the TNT title, especially as of late, is always more well received, and even it's consensus at this point that this title is stuck between a rock and a hard place. But like I said, let's kind of take a look back first, because things weren't always like this. So, the TNT title was introduced in 2020. The title would be seen essentially on the same level as the world title, because they wanted to avoid the label of it being a mid-card championship for mid-card talent. And to introduce this title, they had a tournament. For it, and in the finals, Cody and Lance Archer would meet. Newly introduced and being booked like a monster, many thought Archer would be the first champion, but Cody would go on to win, to the displeasure of some, and other people kind of understanding the booking decision and under the veil of you need a big name to kickstart the belt. And what kind of made it worse was the original design of the championship. It was revealed, and it was disappointing to many because it just kind of looked unfinished, if you all remember the original design. So far, not the best start to a new championship, all things considered. But, you know, things will get better, because Cody Rhodes would take this title, and similar to John Cena's U.S. Open Challenge when John Cena held the U.S. title in WWE back in 2015, Cody would have open challenges for the belt, allowing AEW to showcase the plethora of talent that they had, as well as outside talent, because Cody would go on to introduce the likes of Ricky Starks and Eddie Kingston through these open challenges, and other talent in AEW such as Jungle Boy, Mark Quinn, and Scorpio Sky. Cody would then lose the title in a memorable squash match to the legendary Brody Lee, and Brody would go on to hold that title and defend it a couple times before dropping it back to Cody in a dog collar match. And as we know, tragedy struck and Brody later passed. There's no telling what plans AEW had for Brody in his reign, but they utilized his time as best they could and did a wonderful job of honoring him and his legacy. Cody would hold the belt for a little bit before dropping the belt to Darby Allin at Full Gear. And while these previous reigns were great, this is really where the TNT title really kicked into another gear. Darby would go on to hold that title for 186 days with a total of 6 defenses. Darby would defend against the likes of Brian Cage, Jungle Boy, Scorpio Sky. He would even see himself go on a run where he defended the title each week of April. He would then lose the title to Miro on May 12th, 2021 edition of AEW Dynamite. And I forgot to mention at this point that previously the TN title eventually got its finish design, and it's at this point where the champions started getting their own custom versions of the belt. As we know, Miro's would be the white with the little green accents to it, very beautiful. Darby had the black belt, and so Miro would go on to hold this belt for 140 days with a total of 7 defenses. Quite impressive, as he would go on to defend it against the likes of Lance Archer, Evil Uno, Brian Pillman Jr., Eddie Kingston, before losing it to Sammy Guevara on the September 29th edition of AEW Dynamite. And this is where the struggle of the TNT Championship truly began. Now, admittedly, I am nowhere near a fan of Sammy Guevara, but I could at least understand the decision here. Sammy was proclaimed as one of the 4 young pillars of the company and followed the similar path of his fellow pillars, such as Darby Allin winning the TNT title, Jungle Boy later on winning the tag title. So had to give another young pillar a title reign, to really promote that as the future of this company. And the issue was his reign didn't start off the strongest. I mean, it started off kind of strong because he had defenses against Bobby Fish, Jay Lethal, and Ethan Page, but then things just started getting kind of complicated. He would get involved in that American Top Team versus the Inner Circle feud, which kind of put the belt in like a limbo state where it wasn't defended because he was busy in this feud. And then he would go on to lose the title unexpectedly to Cody. And this is kind of where things really got confusing. So Cody was set to defend the belt against Guevara again on January 8th. But then I'm pretty sure Cody would go on to get COVID. And instead of calling the match off and waiting for Cody to just come back like 1 or 2 weeks later, which isn't that much time, AEW instead booked Sammy to beat Cody's brother Dustin Rhodes in a match to crown an interim champion. And then like 2 weeks later, he'd then go on to beat Cody in a ladder match to determine the true champion. And so, truly, the feud ended up kind of proving useless other than to put Guevara over, because Cody ended up leaving for WWE anyways, and it was just a really confusing time, especially with the belt swapping. And it's at this point that I think Sammy Guevara just really didn't recover, because with the TNT title back on him, he would enter a feud with Darby Allin and Andrade, and despite being the champ, the general crowd reaction kind of showed that the fans wanted anyone but Guevara to win that triple threat for the title, and yet he still retained, and then he entered a feud with Scorpio Sky. And this feud is what almost led to the title of this video being called The Death of the TNT Championship, because my goodness, did the fans hate this feud? Was it just terrible anytime it was on screen? And people were just clamoring for it to be finished. But so Sammy and Scorpio's feud was essentially like a mishmash of multiple things, because it was the two of them, but then it also involved their fellow female competitors Paige Van Zant and Ty Conti. It involved Scorpio's tag partner Ethan Page, Scorpio's former tag partner Frankie Kazarian, and then of course Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky's manager at the time is Dan Lambert. And so Scorpio would go on to defeat Guevara for the title on the March 9th, 2022 edition of AEW Dynamite. And at some point before this, Ty Conti got paired with Guevara on screen. It's Guevara's real life girlfriend, and she's also a competitor in AEW. And so she had been paired with him, and after the match, after Scorpio beats Sammy, Scorpio and Paige start beating down both of them. And this kind of began the saga of the two teams competing against each other. And this is where the things get really kind of confusing, because Sammy's supposed to be the face, but his on and off screen antics of him and Ty kind of caused the fans to turn on them. They didn't really want to see them. The term to use is they had go away heat, where it wasn't that people were booing them because they were necessarily bad. It's just they didn't want to see them on screen. They didn't want to see them on TV. And it just kind of started getting, again, more confusing because, again, he's supposed to be the face. He's supposed to be a good guy in this, but yet, he's getting booed out the building. And for a second, it seemed they'd go the route of, they would go this route where Sammy, tries to challenge again, but he still loses. But then he wins the belt back. And in the match, he turned heel. So it wasn't that bad because they were like, it seemed like AEW was acknowledging the fans' change. And they were going to turn him heel. And it was like a double turn. Scorpio turned into the good guy. Sammy turned into the bad guy in the match. And then Scorpio would then go on to win the title back on April 27th in a ladder match. And then on May 13th, he defended it against Frankie Kazarian, his former tag partner. And in that match, it was like he subsequently turned heel again. And so they flipped it again. Now he was back to being the bad guy and Sammy was back to being the good guy. And then this would lead to a match at Double or Nothing where Ty and Sammy teamed up with Frankie Kazarian, even though the two of them, or like that group, never once really interacted. It was mainly Frankie, just wanting to challenge his former tag partner. And then they would face off against Scorpio, Paige, and Ethan. And this entire feud just kind of really soured on the AEW fan base. There was multiple things in it. Again, Sammy and Ty's just on-screen relationship antics really turned people away. Dan Lambert's offensive comments from his promos. Just different people and pieces of this feud randomly being introduced, and the constant change of dynamics of heel and face. They're terrible promo battles where people just couldn't stand sitting there through these promos. And then of course the constant belt swapping, because as I mentioned, it was like the belt was on Sammy, then it was on Scorpio, then he loses it back to Sammy, who loses it back to Scorpio, and it was just so really confusing. And basically this entire year has just truly been a struggle for the TNT Championship. But after Double or Nothing, things may finally be on reset. Scorpio retained against Dante Martin on June 3rd. It seems he's finally, after Double or Nothing, finished with Sammy and Ty, and both groups look to move on from it. He's currently on 40 plus days of being champion. And so the kind of one question that we're probably coming to is, what is the point I'm trying to make here? What is the narrative I'm trying to discuss here? When it comes to the struggle of the TNT title, the point I kind of want to make is that AEW really needs to start learning when to hard reset and end things when they don't go as they plan. Now, by this, I don't mean changing things only after 1 week of the show, and fans didn't enjoy it at first. I'm talking about when, you're weeks into a storyline and it's just proven week after week that people aren't invested, they aren't enjoying what's going on, and, it's something that needs to be ended quickly. That is what I mean by they need to know when to just stop things before they get even worse. Because, the feud between Sammy and Scorpio started around March and it finished by the end of May. But with the criticism and reactions it had, the feud should not have gone that far. It shouldn't have had that many matches, that many belt swaps, that many heel and face turns and all that stuff that I told you that just made it so convoluted and confusing. And the feud should have not had that many matches, segments, And the worst part of it all, not a single person came out of this feud looking better. People now hate, like I said, Sammy and Ty and actively want them off screen. When he and Scorpio were champions, people literally wanted anyone else. Andrade, Darby or Miro again, Konosuke, Keith Lee, Swerve, Ricky Starks, Eddie Kingston, Malachi Black, Pac, Wardlow, and more names were all names I saw across, different social medias, especially AEW's media page. Anytime they posted about their segments, it was in the comments begging for one of those guys, anyone else to be champion. And that's kind of what's most depressing to me, is that despite being champion, people do not care about Scorpio Sky right now. The man who walked out of this feud as champion, the man who was supposed to walk out of this feud, essentially the winner of this feud, and people do not care. They would rather see somebody else that they deem more deserving win the belt. And it's sad because, this is kind of a guy that, like, again, like many others, AEW has kind of selected to be, like, not necessarily a pillar, but like a really important figure. He was one half of the first tag team champions. He has obviously all these other accolades, like he won the Face of the Revolution ladder match once. Like they've set him up, they featured him prominently, but yet he comes out of this feud looking worse than when he walked in. And that's saying something, because before he walked into this feud, he wasn't really doing much, if you want to say it. Like, he wasn't really on, or I mean, he was on TV a couple of times, as I mentioned, because they were in a feud previously, but like, he just kind of walked out of this feud not even looking any better than when he walked in. Like, I'm not joking, nobody walked out of this feud looking better. And I know many fans were hopeful for Scorpio to have a good reign when he won it from Sammy, and I think he still can. It's just like I said, Tony Khan needs to learn when to cut things. You can experiment and try new things, but you gotta learn from your past mistakes, of the fact that you can't just book feuds like this and continue them when the fans are actively hating it. So, to help Scorpio, the best way to kind of help him is to kind of just, again, look at the past and look at what you did with your previous TNT champions that made them so well. Book Scorpio to have a couple TV defenses against, notable names, but still guys that, can typically take a loss, like a Dante Martin, which he did, a Brian Pillman Jr., a Trent Beretta, a Sean Spears, etc. And for TV specials, like Blood and Guts, Beach Bash, the Arthur Ashe show. Obviously, I don't expect Scorpio Sky to make it that far as champion, as we'll discuss why. But, at TV specials like that, or even the pay-per-views, if he makes it that far to, like, All Out, you have him defend against the big-name opponents that, and, not only just defending against them because, we're throwing this random guy, but no, you have a built-in story, and that's where he can have a feud that leads to a TV special or pay-per-view match with the likes of Eddie Kingston, Wheeler Yuta, Darby Allin, Miro, Swerve, etc. Based around story components such as, based off, because AEW has win-loss records, if they have similar records, trying to prove who's actually the better competitor, playing off maybe past rivalries that he's had, such as, we had a past rivalry with Darby Allin, you can bring that into play, and you do stories like that, and not just from the title being swapped constantly in a short period of time, or a story built around insulting someone's girlfriend, like the Sammy one essentially boiled down to. And, much like the previous reigns, you silently, slowly build up multiple competitors so that it's truly unpredictable as to who eventually dethrones Scorpio. Build Scorpio and whoever you choose up enough so that it makes it mean something when Scorpio is knocked off the throne. Build up Scorpio so that by the time he loses that belt, it actually means something, instead of just, oh yes, the belt's finally off of Scorpio, and build someone up enough so that when they get it, that journey that people follow through with them getting built up, means something. Like, for example, it's like, if Wheeler Yuta, I brought him up, if Wheeler Yuta were to win that TNT title, what a journey that would be, to see him go from, like, everyone knows he's a good wrestler, but like, before all this, especially teaming up with Danielson and Moxley and Regal, he was essentially just like another member of a faction, and he wasn't really anything much and was constantly losing. To go from that to winning a TNT title, and, fighting against such big names like Bryan Danielson and Mox, to see a journey like that, that would mean something, And there's multiple people like that, because I say, like I said, keep it unpredictable, and things are kind of unpredictable at the moment, because you look at all the names that I gave that could be TNT champion, all the ones I named previously, you have all those names that are still silently being built up, so really anyone can. But right now, the TNT title is just currently at rock bottom, but all it requires right now is just the bare minimum to get it out there. Make Scorpio matter so that he doesn't just seem like a transitional champion. AEW, to no fault of their own, has the same issue with the tag titles right now. Everybody has been expecting Jungle Express to just drop those titles, mainly because the way they won wasn't the most credible, and also because they suffer from a really strong division with really great tag teams. And Scorpio's situation kind of follows under the same umbrella. You know, this feud really hurt his stock, and fans are deeming others more important or talented than him. So, like I said, just Scorpio needs to be booked logically and strongly and credibly like his adversaries, so that AEW can avoid the labels of transitional champion and paper champion. You know, and it's like a really common issue right now where a lot of people are champion, and yet their adversaries who aren't even holding belts seem to be getting booked more strongly. They are getting more TV time, they're getting more stories, and like a lot of the champions are just kind of there, and that's kind of not the look you want. You know, if these are supposed to be your champions, and especially if you're trying to grow your audience to more people to want to watch, what's it going to say to people when they look at your champions and are like, these are the champions, they're not even the best in their division, you know? And like I mentioned, you know, I mentioned I didn't think Scorpio's reign would last that long, and who knows, but as we saw on yesterday's edition of AEW, Wardlow's now throwing his name into her, and I mentioned him earlier. Scorpio did in fact beat Wardlow and defended his title, but only because MJF got involved, and that was when they were building the MJF storyline. So, you know, he technically beat him, but, you know, not really, because of interference, and that allowed Scorpio to get like the roll-up, I think it was, that he got on Wardlow. But so Wardlow wants to go after him again, and because of the way Wardlow's been built up, I just don't see Scorpio defending that title, which is kind of sad, because so like I basically spoke all this stuff for nothing, because I think he's probably just going to lose it real quickly. He'll have had his run, and they're just going to have to work their best to rebuild him to hopefully try again sometime in the future, if he even gets that shot at all, you know. Similar to what we were talking about yesterday on the Rule 34 podcast, when Gio chimed in about, you know, the fact that, you know, these big name companies can get away with stuff like that, and like indie companies can't. Similarly, I don't think like Scorpio, despite being such built up, he's not one of the big names like a CM Punk, a Bryan Danielson, an Adam Cole, a Kenny Omega, a Hangman Adam Page, where he can have, you know, feuds like this and still recover. This can really hurt Scorpio, because he's still a decently young guy. He's still fairly new to this company, despite being a day one guy, you know. He hasn't been built up enough that he can have a bad feud like this and, you know, hopefully still recover. Like, it's going to take real time to, like, really not only make people forget, but, you know, build his credibility back up. And who knows if the fans give him that chance, because, you know, much like how we were saying with the indie companies who, you know, they have one bad game and that's all they're remembered for. Who knows if the fans are willing to, you know, give Scorpio another shot down the line. Like, what if in a year's time, even if he's been built up, you know, by AEW, they're just going to always remember the feuds they got with him for a title last time, and they're going to be worried that those are going to be the same feuds he gets when he tries to challenge for the TNT title again, wins the tag titles, even the world title, you know. Like, that poor guy might have this stuff, and, you know, maybe I'm just overreacting in the current moment, but, you know, that stuff can stick with him, because, trust me, wrestling fans, they don't forget things, man. But, like I said, you know, I'm just hoping for the best for the guy and for the TNT title. Just book him strongly, logically, credibly, like his adversaries, and you can avoid all this again. And it is only then can we see the struggles be overcome and the era of prosperity for the TNT title to once again begin again. And with that, I just want to say thank you all for joining for another episode of Game Day. As always, it is very fun to record these. I don't know when the next one will be, but, you know, like I said, it'll more than likely be on the finals. You know, it has to be for the finals matchup. Gotta talk about the Celtics and the Warriors. But, you know, as always, remember, many things in this life may seem impossible, but if you fight for your dreams will fight for you.